Welcome to the show, Joe. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for
My
having
name
me.
is and my fellow tall Jew, Isaac.
Yes, also known as not mayor, calling in from Gotham, New York City. Yeah, let's get started.
So just a little bit of background on us before we go into it. Isaac and I started this project of documenting Jewish history initially on Instagram over 3 years ago.
May of 2020.
Right after COVID started, May 2020. And that evolved into fulfilling something that we had been wanting to do for a while, was to start a podcast. I can't tell you the exact origin of the name. I think we both just said, should we call it the Two Tall Jews? And we're like, yeah, okay, let's
Yeah,
just call it that.
let's start.
um, but we've realized over time that it doesn't say anything about the show.
Uh,
It just sounds like Two Tall Jews schmoozing, which in a way it is, but we've also had some really deep conversations. We've been able to interview over 55 people, I believe.
well,
And thank God it's been super cool. Great way to meet people and to have this time together. Um, I live in Jerusalem. I made Aliyah almost 2 years ago,
mhm.
and that's been a part of the challenge of making continuing this going, making content no matter where we are, and especially in times like this where we really have to be out there. On a personal level, it's been really hard being in Israel in this time. I've never seen anything like this. I was just thinking literally right before I got on. I haven't started it yet, but I bought a book based on my brother-in-law's recommendations called Out of the Depths by Rabbi Meir Israel Lau. And it talks about his survival story. And I really try to shy away from Holocaust comparisons.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's really hard to right now. Um, the way that the brutality that we saw.
Yeah,
Biggest
absolutely.
difference is that didn't have the IDF.
Right.
That's a huge difference. So I guess that's a good transition. Isaac, I'll let you go introduce yourself a little bit if you want, and you can
Yeah,
just jump.
I'll make it very quick. We want to be respectful of your time and of the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so born and raised in New York. I'm finishing up grad school. I'm getting a double master's in history and library science at Queens College. I'm also a Holocaust educator. I'm doing an internship at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. We go to different public middle school and high schools and educate students about the Holocaust. And I'm writing my thesis, um, sort of combined on not only Holocaust monuments, but sort of monuments as just one tool of talking about the history of Holocaust education in the United States. So that's sort of my academic passions and sort of my personal passions.
Very nice.
And
Very
maybe
nice.
you could give us a little introduction about for us, because Isaac, I
Yeah.
follow you, but Isaac's not really active on Twitter, and
Sure. Sure.
also for our listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, obviously my name is Joe Truzman. I've been tracking armed groups, specifically Palestinian terrorist groups in Gaza that operate in Gaza and the West Bank and other areas like Lebanon and Syria. But I also track other groups that are related to the Palestinians, Hezbollah and some others. But most of them are connected to Iran. I work for the Foundation of Defensive Democracies. I've been working with them for about 4 years now, and yeah, and I'm based in the United States, and that's just and I write a lot about these groups. Really, that's just my thing. I want to. I think things changed for me in 2014 during the Gaza war,
Mhm.
and I felt that there wasn't enough information out in the media, especially like CNN, MSNBC, and all those places, where it didn't talk enough about these groups of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all the other groups involved, right? So there was just not enough information about them. So that who they were, what they did, that they were terrorist groups, and so that really put me on a path. And so now that's what I do. I kind of explain demonstrate or try to provide evidence of these groups is like what they do and their atrocities. And I've been doing it for years now, right? And now we see what happened obviously just a few days ago, and I've told people I'm surprised. I'm surprised it happened, but I'm not surprised it happened, right? So
Yeah.
um so yeah, so my goal here is just to educate the public really, and who these people are, what this group is, what these groups are. So that's what I've been doing for years now. So essentially, that's what I do. Yeah, I do some other stuff as well. Won't get into that, but as far as armed groups and but that's the main thing that I do is just trying to
Right.
educate the public.
Amazing. Yeah, then that's how I first saw you. I remember must have been 3 or 4 years ago, probably
Yeah,
maybe around the time you started with FDD.
yeah.
And
Wait, you've been following him for 3, 4 years, and you didn't tell me about it? You bury the lead?
definitely mentioned. I've
Oh,
definitely.
okay.
I told you about Twitter. You got to get on Twitter to begin with. That's the thing.
Yeah, listen, gotta.
Do you use any other pages? Can people find you anywhere else?
Yeah.
Telegram?
There's not, it's Twitter and then just FDD's website. There's longwarjournal.com .org, but that's an FDD product. So that's where I write a lot too. So Long War Journal, yeah. So but yeah, so that's it. I don't I'm not like on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. I just
Okay.
do. I'm just on Twitter, or I'm sorry, formerly called Twitter, now called
X.
X.
Right. Because when
So,
not to so I work in marketing a little bit, digital marketing. I work in social
yeah.
media. And just to give you a little tip, because you're already doing it on Twitter, all you need to do is screenshot and then share that on Instagram. And
Yeah.
then you're
Interesting.
not doing any
That's it.
work. You're just screenshotting and sharing.
I'm sure there's like an automated way just to do like, so I don't even have
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
like
yeah. Like share
like
my
a
tweets or posts on
yeah.
Instagram as a
Yeah,
screenshot.
exactly. I'm sure there is. And yeah, no, that's
Mhm.
a very good idea. I didn't think about that. I just never touched Instagram, so
Right,
I'll have to think about that. Maybe yeah, just a way to get this information out to,
right.
a broader audience.
Just a little time context in case you're listening to this in a couple months from now when, please God, things are a little calmer. We're recording this in the middle of the war between Israel and Hamas and a little bit of Hezbollah as of this recording. That was launched on October 7th, 2023, in the middle of Simchat Torah and the last day of the Jewish high holidays, on Shabbat as well. Over, as of this recording, over 1,300 civilians, 1,300 Israelis, 200 of whom are soldiers, at least, have been killed. And the country is in a state of war. So we basically want to understand and maybe give our listeners and our watchers, because I want to make some clips out of this for Instagram, maybe even TikTok, and just let's go from the beginning. Right, Isaac, you want to take it? You want to take it?
Yeah. Joe, can you talk about or sort of break down for our listeners and for us the nature of the attack and sort of what took place on October 7th and, and sort of bring us to the current moment from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so Saturday morning on Shabbat morning, the Palestinian terrorist groups began launching rockets towards Israel. There's rockets in the south and I believe central Israel as well. But this was a diversion for a ground attack and an attack from sea. So what happened is terrorists from belonging to Hamas and a whole host of other armed groups reached the security fence. They penetrated the security fence. They were able to blow it up, basically, certain sections of it, and they started streaming into southern Israel, into the all of the kibbutzim there. They used motorcycles, they used pickup trucks, they walked there, they ran there, and started committing atrocities. Also, what was different about this attack, let's say, is that they used paragliders. They came in from the air. So, and this is something the Israeli Defense Establishment was expecting from Hezbollah in the north, not from the south, I think. So this is very surprising. So that happened as well. There were paragliders coming into southern Israel from Gaza, and I believe some of them were landed near the Peace Festival, where I think about 200 people, 200 civilians were killed, murdered rather. So it was that was a facet of the attack, as well as through the sea, so infiltrations from the sea. I can't tell you exactly what they did. They may have used dinghies, they may have swam to the shores, but regardless, this was a ground attack essentially, and I hate saying this, but it was highly successful. Right? It was highly successful. I don't think even Hamas knew how successful they would be. And on top of the atrocities that they committed and then the murders of more than just hundreds and hundreds of people, they took hostages, right? They took and then brought them back into Gaza. They brought soldiers in. They brought hostages, rather civilians in from all sorts of nationalities. So this is almost a double whammy, you can say. So they murdered all these civilians, but on top of that, now they have hostages, which they will try to use to for prisoner exchange, which is they have done before in the past. Everybody knows about Gilad Shalit. Something similar to that, but on a much grander scale. At least that's what they will try. I don't know if they'll be successful. And from what I expect, the Israelis, the army will launch a ground war into Gaza with the aim, I imagine, the goal of rescuing these hostages, right? So, but I can't say if they'll be successful, of course. So, but yeah, so now, yes, they have these hostages, and now they're going to want Palestinian prisoners, many of them with blood on their hands, and that's the reality right now. So that's where we're at as far as Gaza is concerned, what's happened. But there are other fronts, say you took Lebanon and Syria, that are very concerning. We've seen already some flashes, or rather some fighting there, some rockets being fired, Hezbollah responding to Israeli airstrikes, and then I think it was yesterday, some mortar launches from Syria. So, and then actually, I believe the Israeli Air Force attacked some airfields, some airports in Syria earlier today. So yeah, these fronts are starting to become active, and it's very concerning. Is Israel going to be in a multi-front war now? Are they going to be attacked from almost every direction? It's again very concerning.
I want to ask a question about the Israel's southern border, which is historically very secure. What do you think was it, what sort of what caught them off guard with regard to the border? Why do you think has that been like an
Yeah.
ongoing development, or is that something that was sort of like something more immediate?
Oh no, this is okay. So I'll tell you, Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist groups, they've been studying the border for a very long time. So they watch IDF patrols, where they study it, they see where they are going. They've conducted many attacks at the Gaza border. The most memorable being in 2018 with the March of Return. And there is quite a few other examples. So they've studied the border, they've studied the security fence, and the new barrier that was installed or established just a year or two ago, or maybe around that time, by the IDF. So they've studied it. They understand how it works, so they know where its weak spots are, right? And these walls and the security fence can be destroyed. So that's what they did. They used explosives. They blew it up. They blew sections of the wall out, and or rather, the security fence. So that's what happened there. It's not really complicated what they did, right? It was just surprising that they were just successful at it, and the IDF was just caught off guard. It seems like, and the amount of terrorists that were able to come in, right, through, like I said before, with pickup trucks and bikes, was enormous. Is incredible. So yeah, it's, again, it wasn't sophisticated, but they've been studying the border for a very long time, and they figured out where their weak spots were at, and they were successful at penetrating Israeli territory.
Right. And do you know, like, was it fully a surprise in terms of, like, why did it take 6 hours? at least for the first troops to arrive? Was it because of the holiday? Was it because of Shabbat? Was it because of the surprise? All the above?
Right. I think that question is still remains to be answered. I think those are good points, though, what you're saying. Yeah, and I think what happened, what's rather a possibility that happened is that the IDF became complacent, right? They thought that Hamas wasn't going to attack anytime soon, that Hamas was willing to just take in money from Qatar every month and just keep quiet. But of course, that wasn't the case, right? So I think the Israelis became complacent. They didn't think a major attack would happen from Gaza, especially something like this. I think I said it before, I believe they thought this would happen in the north, right? But yeah, it happened in the south. So, but again, it's still too early to tell right now. I mean, it's this, I mean, I know we're like, what, 5, 6 days into this now. But it's still the beginning. And when this is all over, I think there'll be more answers to these questions, but that's my initial reaction right now. I think they became complacent and just didn't expect something to happen. And yeah, it was Shabbat. It was and it was a Jewish holiday on top of that. So yeah, there may have been less IDF soldiers manning the post there at the border. And then of course the confusion that happened that must have occurred when the initial during the initial attack. All these rockets are being fired, right, to distract the IDF, right? While this infiltration has happened, this mass infiltration was happening. So, so yeah, I don't think people believe what was actually happening. I didn't believe what was actually happening, even though I was seeing evidence of it, right? I was seeing evidence of of these pickup trucks going into Israel from Gaza. I thought it was, I just couldn't believe it, but yeah, it was happening. So I think there was a lot of confusion in the beginning hours, that's for sure.
Right. And just now to do a little macro, Iran, right? It came out that they're basically fully behind this. We know that they are fully in control of Hezbollah. Hamas pretends like they're independent, at least to the out world, but like everyone knows that they're also taking orders from Iran to a certain extent. They get most of their funding, if I think that would be correct, from Iran. What role have they been playing, and is it going to basically increase before it decreases their participation?
Right. Very good question. I'll say this. Iran doesn't give funds, doesn't give arms and support just to armed groups, to Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and a whole host of other groups, just to be nice. They do it to buy influence, right? And we know what Iran thinks about Israel, right? So it's to buy influence. And yes, Hamas may not be an actual proxy of created by Iran, like let's say Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah, but it definitely is influenced by Iran. Okay, so I think that's an important point to make. Also, something I just want to add is that there. I published this just a few months ago, a visual of all the Iran-backed groups on Israel's borders. So it's not just, for example, it's not just Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza that are that receive support from Iran. Okay, there's about I'd say about 6 to 8 groups in Gaza alone, right, that receive some type of assistance from Iran. There's Hezbollah in Lebanon. There's quite a few groups in Syria as well. There's, for instance, there's Hezbollah's in Syria, Hamas, Islamic Jihad in Syria. There's groups that have been established by the IRGC during the Syrian civil war that are in Syria that threaten Israel. There's Iraqi groups that are backed by Iran that operate in Syria as well. So, and then of course you have the Palestinian groups in the West Bank. So that being said, Israel's Israel's surrounded by these groups, and essentially that's what they are. They're surrounded by Iran-backed groups. So this visual that I published demonstrates that, and in detail actually, of each group. So and that's on the FDD website. So I think if there's your listeners are interested in that, to definitely go check it out. But yeah, listen, I saw this argument. I've seen it quite a few times already that, oh, well, maybe Iran didn't know what was going on, that didn't direct it, or didn't order this attack. But listen, come on. I mean, Iran doesn't surround Israel with 19 armed organizations for no reason. Okay, it's just so
Right.
it just
One
doesn't
of,
make sense,
one of the things that made this attack unique, is that it wasn't just Hamas. It was like like there's a bunch of other. It's Hamas in Gaza, but then there's a bunch of smaller like terrorist groups like Palestinian Islamic Jihad and popular resistance. What is that one called?
Yeah, you got it. Popular resistance committees. Yeah, you got it.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and so they all participated. We call it Hamas
yeah.
because Hamas is calling the shots, but it was like a lot of little groups that all kind of unified against us.
Yeah, and it's been like that for a while. I mean, this is not new. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They've done it for example, there was previous conflicts the last couple of years with Islamic Jihad. It wasn't just Islamic Jihad. Maybe Hamas wasn't involved in it kinetically, but the Hamas and Islamic Jihad, they're supported by these smaller groups, right? So that's what they've been doing the past couple of years, and in 2021, and previous to that. So can go back for more than a decade, almost 2 decades, one can argue. So, yeah, it's these little groups. They support the bigger ones, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and that's what happened on October 7th. Okay, so everybody needs to know who these groups are. Some of them, or most of them, are considered, or rather designated as terrorist organizations by the United States and other Western governments, which is great. But some of them aren't. All right, even though they have a lengthy track record of terrorism. So hopefully. After what happened on October 7th, that will change, and all the groups involved will be designated as terrorists by a bunch of countries. I don't know what will happen, but it should. But yeah, so it's a lot of groups. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've now, and that's important to understand the other factions sort of being governed below Hamas. But I want to sort of I want to better understand the governing structure of Hamas. My understanding is that it's for the most part sort of a decentralized terrorist organization where the understanding the power structure is a bit more complicated than understanding, a governing party in another country. And it's sort of, am I correct in saying it's it's more spread out? It's harder to sort of when it comes to eliminating the enemy, and we talk about Hamas, it's from like a regional standpoint, is that
Yeah.
easier sort of said than done?
Yeah, definitely easier said than
Yeah.
done. I mean, for example, Hamas has leadership inside of Gaza, that operates inside of Gaza. And everybody knows Yahya Sinwar, for example. He's the chief in Gaza. But then you have the leadership that's abroad, right? That fled Gaza and never came back.
Comfortably in Doha,
Yeah. It's just like,
Qatar.
okay, right? Yeah, I live in, like they say, live in the life. So yeah, then you have like Ismail Haniya, who's out there raising funds and doing other things, and so yeah, so they're not all in one spot, of course, and yeah, there's something I hear a lot. There's the so-called political leadership, right? The political wing, right? And then of Hamas, and a military wing of Hamas, which is often referred to as, in short, Qassam brigades. I'll tell you, that's just nonsense. Okay, there's no, they're the same. Okay, they do that to hide at least the so-called political wing. They call themselves politicians to hide their crimes. Okay, so that's but it's ridiculous, okay? They work together. Yeah, there may be, camps within the so-called military side and the so-called political side that maybe they disagree with each other, right? With certain things. But that's nonsense. It's nonsense. So they work together. So and there's a lot of history in that about that. There's that one can cite or provide evidence to back that up of what I'm saying. But yeah, they're spread out. Okay, so there's Hamas in Saudi Arabia. They're everywhere. So when you hear the Israeli government saying we're going to destroy Hamas, right? It's that is one difficult task because it's yeah, you can go into Gaza and let's say take out all the Hamas members there, but they're everywhere. I mean, they're in Turkey as well. Turkey's a major hub for Hamas. Salah al-Aruri, for example, the West Bank, the chief of the West Bank for Hamas is has resided there. Another top Hamas leader. So yeah, that's why I say this is going to be a very long conflict. It's not just the guys in Gaza. They're everywhere.
And as a follow-up,
Oh,
for Israel for Israel to essentially come back and fix the mistake of Bush and Sharon, what does it mean? Like what does Israel need to do to actually take Gaza back?
Yeah.
After the bombing is
Right.
and we've gotten the hostages, which we'll get to. We want to talk about the hostages separately.
Of course. Of course. I don't have the perfect answer for you, but I'll say just my initial assessment is that I can't imagine Israel going to Gaza, obviously doing the airstrikes, destroying whatever infrastructure, Hamas infrastructure is there and the other armed groups, going there in a ground offensive, and then saying, okay, I'm done, I'm out of here. And then what? Who's going to fill the vacuum there that's been created? Another armed group, right? Because that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So I, it could be an occupation of Gaza, right? I don't know. Maybe Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party will try to replace Hamas in Gaza. I don't know. These are just like preliminary assessments, of course. I don't know, but there's destroying Hamas isn't. There's just so much more to it than that. Okay, so I can't give you a good answer for that because it's almost an impossible feat just considering everything that's happening in Gaza, just with the poverty there, of course, and the stranglehold that Hamas has had in that group, in that enclave for
Do
for
you
so long.
remember, like, were you, I don't want to call you old, but were you like in the business back in the day when Israel did control it and we had Gush Katif and there was like a situation where like, how did that look? Were they just like, were the soldiers just not in the southern part of the strip and they were only hanging out in the settlements part of the strip? What was the dynamic back when Israel had it? Do you remember?
I wasn't in the business when before Israel evacuated the communities in Gaza. However, there were patrols there. There were IDF. I mean, there of course there are areas they wouldn't go into, especially I imagine but regardless, there was definitely an Israeli presence there. They had to. And yeah, they did go into, certain cities and things like that. But, it's not like they were, just hanging out in Gaza City and having
No, it's
coffee.
more
So,
like now in the West Bank, like you live near Ramallah, but you're not going to Ramallah.
yeah, exactly. So, I would say that's fair assessment. So, but yeah, I think, But yeah, I wasn't in the business really during that time, but I do recall a few things.
You always hear old timers here in Israel being like, "Man, we used to go to Gaza to buy the fruit every day, so much cheaper. I had so many
Yeah,
friends in Gaza."
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
no,
And
this
then
mistake we made.
yeah. Oh no, the people know they definitely made friends with and then with laborers too and things like that. I mean, there's still Gazans that come into Israel, of course, so and
Mhm.
work. But yeah, no, I've heard those stories.
What was the mayor the when we met on Hasbara fellowships, by the way, as a side note. Who was the J Post writer who said he was joking about the Oslo Accords and he said things were better before peace?
Gil Hoffman.
Yeah, Gil Hoffman, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
He's still, yeah,
Um
before peace.
sorry.
so
Yeah.
we've talked about the hostages. I mean we've mentioned that, but now let's talk about it. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
Steve's no, I know that the Jerusalem Post published a statement from a Hamas official, and I don't know if you can speak to the validity of this with regard to that Qatar is potentially interested in brokering a potential sort of prisoner hostage swap in the sort of imminent future. Now, I want to my the second thing I want to add to that is at a certain point, if this air invasion, if the air bombardment that Israel's doing in Gaza is a way to strategically set up for an effective ground invasion, at a certain point, will Israel be forced to make a decision between prioritizing the hostages and then versus viewing them as unfortunate, I mean, it's terrible to say, collateral damage when it comes to trying to drain Hamas?
Right. I don't think the Israelis, and I'm just saying this is my own opinion,
Of
I don't
course.
have
Yeah,
evidence or
of
anything like
course.
that. That they don't want Hamas to use the hostages as leverage. Okay, so I mean they've already tried. It was just a couple days ago when Hamas threatened to execute hostages. So so they already tried, but I don't think Israel will let them do that. So as far as use the hostages as leverage, so they will push on with whatever military objectives that they have. All right. Yes, they're trying to rescue the hostages, of
Yeah.
course, and I think they will entertain the idea of a political solution to get the hostages back because you got to remember there's it's just not only Israeli hostages, there's
No.
American
Yeah.
hostages and other nationalities. So Israel obviously has to act responsible here. They don't want to put the they don't want to harm the hostages because of their military actions there too. So it's very complicated, of course. But we got to understand something, and I don't see this being talked about enough, is that there's certain there are a lot of hurdles that need to be made, okay, for a hostage, let's say, a prisoner swap to occur. And what I mean by that specifically, I'll give you one example. So just from the research that I've done over the past few days, there's pretty good evidence that I'd say about 3 or 4 groups, terrorist groups, have hostages or the remains of soldiers, right? Okay. So you have, let's say, 4 groups. Okay. So yes, all of them are affiliated with Hamas. Okay. So there's that connection there. But this isn't like Gilad Shalit per se, because Hamas held Gilad Shalit. The Gilad Shalit operation in itself was executed by several groups, but at the end it was Hamas that had Gilad Shalit. Anyways, but now you have like four groups that have hostages, right? So what are you going to do now? So you have to coordinate with all these groups, right? And these groups aren't just going to be like, oh, oh yeah, sure, take the hostages, right? So you can have them, Hamas or whoever, and then you can, transfer them. They're going to want something. They're going to want something big, right? And I mean, this is a gold mine for these smaller groups. So. So yeah, and some of them have claimed, like Islamic Jihad, I think claimed they had about 30 hostages, and again, the remains of hostages too, so or
They're,
Israeli
you're
soldiers.
saying you're saying each of these individual groups is now being like, these are mine, and you're not going to
Yeah,
take them to
they
Hamas.
could, they could absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
What I mean, what stops them from doing that? Yeah, like I was saying, yeah, they are affiliated with Hamas, right? They have a relationship with Hamas, but you got to understand too that these groups, the Palestinian society as well, they as far as prisoners are the prisoners in Israeli jails, it's very important to them. They're going to want those prisoners out. And I don't think they're going to be very reluctant to give up their prisoners. That's for sure. Even if Hamas is willing to do something, so that's a hurdle. I'm not saying it can't be overcome, but we're dealing with probably 4 or 5 different entities here. That's what I'm trying to get at. That you're going to have to convince all of them to give up the hostages, give up the remains, and then for a potential swap. So I'm not sure if if that's gonna be able to happen. I just don't know.
Please God.
Yeah.
Okay. So talking a little bit about the reserve units.
Yeah.
And this is something that I guess me, because as a civilian here on the ground, when I didn't serve, when I made Aliyah after the required age, and actually when I started the Aliyah process, I had all the intentions to volunteer, and then it took so long that by the time I got here, I was like, I don't know, I just want to keep working. So in these moments, you kind of feel like you could feel helpless, and thank God the people here have really mobilized. Like it's actually insane how people are donating, people are helping, even taking care of like families that their husbands or older brothers have gone and left the house, and now it's like a lone mother with her children. Like really in all facets, everyone here is really stepping up. My question is the IDF simply not able to like is this the plan of the IDF, where like if everyone's called up, we need the country to also mobilize with us? Like it just seems like to be asked in a group chat, please donate so that we can have enough bulletproof vests for our soldiers, or like little, I understand food, I understand you run out, like of course going out to buy canned food, that makes sense. Like the army obviously could have a certain amount. When it comes to the equipment, the equipment is not prepared for the full standing army of the reserves, or they were just caught, it was part of the getting caught off guard.
Maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, listen, it's what is it, 300,000
Yeah.
being called up, 300,000 reservists. So that's, I mean, you gotta imagine
Overnight.
yeah, and to get all those supplies and everything, that's
Right.
it's quite a feat, right? So it's I've seen the reports, I've seen some of the oh, how should I say it? Evidence of these types of asks, like night vision goggles, bulletproof vests, things like that are needed. Because it's just enormous the amount of reservists being called up. Just because you got to remember, well, we got to figure out, okay, well, what's Israel's goal here exactly, and in Gaza? Okay, so because we talked about occupying it earlier, right? So can you imagine how many soldiers it takes to try to occupy something like Gaza, right? Or a ground invasion, and on
Right.
top of that, I think the Israeli defense establishment is thinking, okay, well, we got to be prepared for everything. So it's very possible we're not only in a war with Gaza, we're in a war with Hezbollah and other Iranian proxies and those that are backed by Iran. So they may be just preparing for a multi-front war, and that's why they have so many reservists out. So it doesn't surprise me that they're needing this type of let's say we're hearing about these asks for equipment. It's just the sheer amount of the volume of reservists coming up, right? Being called up. So am I worried about it? Lack of supplies and things like that. Not really. I don't think there will be soldiers out there without the gear that they need to fight effectively. But then again, yeah, like I said, there's 300,000 soldiers. Wow, that's incredible. I mean, called up, yeah, overnight. So was Israel unprepared? I mean, one could make that argument that it was or that it is. To supply these soldiers, with what they need as far as
Yeah.
certain things. So yeah, I think that's as far as I could speak to right now on that subject. But yeah, I think it's just Israel's just preparing for the worst, right? They're preparing for the worst right now, considering what's happened. So yeah, I think that's where we're at right now.
Out of curiosity, I don't know if it's public knowledge, how many reservists does the IDF have? Like 300,000 of how many?
Yeah, I know I don't have that number. I don't know. That's something, yeah, I'd be curious to know as well, because you have to obviously can't call all of them up. So no, I can't say. Because I just don't have the numbers or the figures in front of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that we're near capacity right now.
I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Is there any validity to the report that Netanyahu denied before even acknowledging it with regard to a phone call from Egypt, sort of warning of a Hamas attack? And Netanyahu said, and I'm paraphrasing, I have bigger problems to deal with. Again, like, not trying to blame the prime minister and like switch the conversation away from the brutality, but when talking about the origins, do you think there's merit to that claim?
That's so tough. And yeah, that I think it was the report that the Egyptians told them, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah. When it comes to that, that's intelligence stuff, right? That's most people aren't going to know that. He may have, it's possible, because listen, the Egyptians work very closely with Hamas and other armed groups. I mean, not that I'm not trying to say they're allies per se, but they work closely. I mean, Egypt has acted as a mediator many, many times in previous conflicts, right? So, and they're a good mediator, I believe, and they do have a relationship with Israel and Palestinian groups like
But they keep
Hamas.
the border closed and they don't.
Yeah, yeah, very good, right? So yeah, very good point. So yeah, so it's but anyway, so yeah, I mean, I could see the Egyptians saying, hey, something this is going on. I mean, you got to remember, Israel has helped the Egyptians tremendously, especially in the northern Sinai with the problem with the Islamic State. So there's definitely a relationship there. I can see information being passed along to Israel from Egypt. But and I think I saw some reports as well that there was some activity at the border there, like a day, within the time period before it happened, right? So I can't say how valid that is, but there seems to be signs that something was that signs were missed, right? Or something was going on beforehand that was missed. But again, like I said earlier, it's still early to know exactly what happened, but I think I'm sure a commission of inquiry will be set up after this in Israel, and
Yeah.
they'll find out more. But who knows? Who knows exactly what happened?
Not to keep talking about speculation, and I think this is thank God, this is still speculation after yesterday with Iran and sorry, not Iran, with Hezbollah in the north. I mean, it is Iran, but essentially yesterday I walked out of my house. Sometimes you gotta get you might get cabin fever if you're indoors too long in these situations. So I literally had to walk out and went for a walk. And my friend actually was organizing a little concert in someone's house, like something chill. It's really important for our mental health here. And as I'm walking in, I get what is now we now know false alarms from the north. I think it must have been literally your tweets, and and I'm like, oh, okay, this is fine. Like, whatever. I'll just go into the house. I went to the house though right after the alert came in, and in the room where this was happening, there was no service, and it's like, it's annoying because so long as I have service, I can just respond to a quick text and be like, hey, everything's okay, don't worry, even if at the time we didn't know it was false alarms. And whatever, I ended up actually leaving because I was right. I did get texts and they were able to come through and I was able to calm everyone down. And then we found out that it was false. Was that just sort of, it's a two-part question. Was that Hezbollah playing mind games and setting off the alarms on purpose? Or and what it like are they is there a lot of chatter? Are they actually going to enter at this point? Obviously Israel's fully armed in the north and there's no more surprise. Are is there activity up until now with the random rockets or mortars? Have they just been like to make statements, or in and please God, like are they gonna, I hope not, God forbid, are they invaded? What's the status as of today, October 12th, 2023?
Right. As far as what happened with the false alert, um, I'll tell you from experience. There have been misidentifications before, false alarms in the south, in southern Israel, and in northern Israel. Okay, so that there's precedence there. However, what was interesting about this one is that, and I noticed this right off the bat. I didn't realize it until afterwards, and until I found out that it was just a false alarm. Is that where the area where it occurred, the where the alerts were for, because it wasn't just like one little spot. It was pretty massive, and most of it was actually in southern Lebanon, a good part of it, not just in northern Israel. So it was very strange. And then you started hearing reports of gliders and
Right. Yeah.
drones and or not just rockets. So obviously everybody's very very worried already just because what's happened in the south. So yeah, but obviously, ended up being a false alarm. So what happened, right? Right. I could tell you three things. Either misidentification by the Iron Dome, which happens, right? It does happen. But this one was on a massive scale. Um, Two, it's a human error. Okay, maybe human error. Three, it's possible it could be a cyber attack. I don't have evidence of that. I haven't spoken to anyone about it being a cyber attack, but it could be, it's possible, right? Especially if there were to be a cyber attack against the Iron Dome, right? I imagine that this would be the time to do it because it's such in on the precipice of such of a massive conflict or war. So who could do that? Iran, possibly Hezbollah, but regardless, that's what's happening. That's what's happened there. And forgive me, since I've been talking, I completely blanked on your second question, even though I already had the answer for it when you were asking me. So do you remember what your second question was, or did I answer it already?
You answered it.
I did. Okay.
Oh
Forgive
no!
me.
Oh no! The second question is like, what is their strategy moving forward? Are
Right.
they
Yeah.
are
Yes.
they just gonna like be like a dog that barks really loud but doesn't actually have a bite?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Excuse me. And it goes
Even
back.
today, Israel like bombed the Damascus airport,
Yeah.
and Israel's basically being like, we're not afraid of you, and
Right.
and they didn't do anything,
No.
thankfully.
Yeah. No. Israel's definitely signaling that they will react harshly. Um, I mean, they killed. Israel bombed a Hezbollah position a few days ago and killed three members of Hezbollah. Okay, and
Right.
Hezbollah retaliated several times. So I have no doubt that the so-called axis of resistance, meaning these groups and these terrorist groups in Gaza and Lebanon, Syria. Uh,
Sound,
I'm
they
sorry.
sound like they sound like supervillains. I mean, they
Yeah, I
are.
know, right? But that's what they call themselves.
They
There's
are
axis of
evil.
resistance. Even the groups in Iraq and in Yemen and the Houthis in Yemen. Anyway,
Right.
that they have they are well prepared. They were prepared beforehand. Okay, so I have no doubt about it that they were prepared for something. So in regards to Hezbollah, I have no doubt they're in there. They're in their bunkers. They're ready to do something now. But it's just not Hezbollah. It's Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other Palestinian groups. They do operate in southern Lebanon. Before that, you wouldn't hear about Palestinians via. I'm talking about, let's say, like 10 years ago. But in the last few years, Palestinians are launching attacks from southern Lebanon under the auspices of Hezbollah, of course, and likely like the IRGC. So I think there's a combined thing. In the last few days, we've seen attacks from Lebanon, actual attacks. Islamic Jihad sent 2 fighters in, sent 2 terrorists into northern Israel. They were shot and killed, but they took out as well, I believe, some IDF personnel. So anyway, I like everyone's saying, really, I think people are just waiting for the or rather, Hezbollah is just waiting for the ground offensive to start so they can distract the IDF.
Hezbollah wants a ground offensive into Lebanon or into
Oh, I'm sorry, into I apologize, into Gaza. They're waiting for a ground offensive into Gaza. I imagine they're waiting for a ground offensive into Gaza before really reacting. Okay, before let's say lighting up this front between Lebanon and Israel, just to distract the Israelis, right? They need to let the pressure off Hamas and distract the Israeli army. So I fully expect that, and then Syria too with other groups. So yeah, so they're prepared. I expect a lot more to happen on these fronts, especially when there's a ground invasion, which I expect a ground invasion into Gaza.
And we should be protected when that happens. What's it called? So something happened right before or right after the war started that has happened many times in our history here in conflicts, is that the UN peacekeepers, in quotation marks, at the borders left left Lebanon.
They fled with Hamas. Sorry.
What's the deal with, like, I don't understand, like, is that like I guess it's just like, what do they actually do? Because this is a moment where the peace should be kept, and obviously, like, maybe Israel even asked them to leave. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that also happened, but like that, I'm saying that's speculation. I'm not gonna say that's what happened, but like, what is their actual purpose? Because the same thing happened in 67, the same thing happened in 73, same thing happened. Like, like, I don't understand why they're even here, if when, like, it's the moment of truth, as we say, they just leave.
Yeah, I can't tell you about the validity about all the reporting, but I'm not surprised. They've demonstrated time and again, like you were saying, that they're not that they're not. It's almost like they're not worth being stationed there, because Hezbollah doesn't care that they're there, right? I mean, Hezbollah has killed the UNIFIL peacekeepers before. I mean, they've just recently, actually, I think it was about a year ago, a member of Hezbollah killed the UNIFIL peacekeeper. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't understand why they're there if they're not really doing their job, right?
No, it's I don't know, it's virtue signaling. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
Peace signaling.
it's something, that's for sure, but it's not working. I'll say that, right? It's obviously not working, because when they can't stop Hezbollah, they're definitely not going to stop Israel. So, I just don't get it. What's the point of having them there? So, but well, I mean, that's an argument someone can make. I'm sure there's someone can find a good argument for it, but it's tough for me to understand.
They probably work for the UN.
Right. But yeah, it's they just demonstrate time and time again, right? That they can't I don't know, just be relied on if they want to, let's say, stop Hezbollah from setting up launch sites in southern Lebanon. For example, they're not going to stop them. They're not going to. They just won't. So I mean, they may make a note of it and complain or let the UN know. But yeah, that's
Right.
that doesn't help.
I want to ask a question about the Abraham Accords. And so immediately on the night of October 7th, as a member of the Saudi government released a public statement, and I'm blanking on his name, but he, in talking about sort of the invasion into southern Israel, everything he said about that, almost by the end of his statement, could be read as a defense of that invasion. So it was very sort of, it was sort of very clear where what he thought of it, and the statement couldn't be sort of uttered without talking about the ongoing occupation. so-called. Does this speak to sort of the hollowness of the Abraham Accords, or should we understand the agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia as an agreement in economic terms?
Sorry,
If what?
pause. Just to because I mean Saudi Arabia is not technically in it yet,
Oh, I see.
but they were having deeper conversations, right? And I mean the question's still valid.
Yeah.
The question's still valid for the UAE, for Bahrain,
Right.
for Morocco,
Right.
or who else has been in it? I mean Sudan.
So
kind
I
of.
guess thank you for cutting me off, Mayor. So just to pivot quickly, are we to view the countries that are part of the Abraham Accords as countries that are interested in a bilateral agreement with the state of Israel for economic reasons and not foreign policy reasons?
Mhm.
It's a good question. From what I've seen, which I don't do a lot of the foreign policy stuff, but everything that I've seen so far, I think there are true intentions to create a relationship, not only obviously economic relationship, but but a relationship between the Arabs and Jews, and I do see that. I've seen evidence of that, and I think it's something that's really just great that's coming out of the Abraham Accords. But I think Saudi Arabia is a completely different story here, because the way I see it is that if the Saudis were to make peace with Israel, normalize relations, let's just say, officially, then other Muslim countries, other Arab countries would, they would follow, right? And I think the way I see it, Hamas and Iran and the so-called acts of resistance that I was talking about earlier, they're deathly afraid of that. They do not want that. They don't want these countries to have peace with Israel because they've seen what the Abraham Accords has produced so far, and a lot of positive things between Israel and other Muslim countries. So. And I think one can make the argument that this attack happened in part, at least in part, due to this potential deal with peace agreement between the Saudis and Israel. I mean, you could go back. A great example, obviously, is the Oslo Accords with what happened there when following the Oslo Accords, and then Hamas with the suicide bombings and other armed groups doing the same. So they're just trying to derail peace. I think that's a reason for one of the reasons behind this attack. So there's probably other reasons as well. We may know later down the road, maybe 5-10 years from now, why this happened. But so yeah, if wish I could comment more about the Abraham Accords, but again, I think this Saudi peace deal with Israel was a factor in this attack.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that. Isaac, I just googled it. I googled UAE stance on the war, and the first one of the articles that came up was that a UAE minister said, "We don't mix economy and trade with politics."
Well, there we go.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, take him for his word.
There's the answer for the first one. But they are appalled. They are appalled by Hamas violence, and then they also
Mm.
warned Syria not to get involved. So those
Yeah.
are the three things from the UAE, which is, I guess, the
Mm.
They'll
strongest.
take their money and they'll respond with symbolism and rhetoric.
I mean, then again, a few years ago, you probably would have never gotten a statement like that. So,
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
incremental
so
thought.
I will definitely say that. So, and from other countries. So, in the region. So yeah, but no, I do get your point.
So
Yeah,
where
it's
do
sad.
we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe, where do we go from here?
Huh. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out every day when I wake up. Okay, what's going to happen today? Where are we now? Um, I can't. I wish. Yeah, I wish I could say, but it's not good news though. I think now we just sit back and wait and see what the how Israel reacts, not only politically, especially because of the hostages, but the impending ground invasion, right? And I think it's important to note that Israel is going to need time, a lot more time than they've ever been given in previous conflicts, because international pressure it does affect Israeli decisions, Israeli political decisions in conflict. So I definitely think Israel's going to need as much leeway as it's going to need to reach its military objectives in Gaza. Whether they're actually going to achieve them, whether they're going to be able to get that time, I don't know. You know, it's tough to say, but the scale and the scope of this attack, I think they're going to be given more time than in previous wars. I remember in 2014, how long was that war? About 50 days. 50 days. So yeah,
I had a ground operation.
yeah. So but I think they're gonna need more than that. Um so yeah, I can't, unfortunately I can't predict the future like most people, but it's I definitely think they're gonna need a lot of time. And I don't know if they're gonna get that from the international community. You know, people just start forgetting what happened.
Yeah,
And you know,
amnesia's
that happens a
high.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can see a perfect example is, you know, Russia, Ukraine. I definitely won't get into that, but you know, people start, you know, forgetting there's a war there, and that yeah, support wanes after a while. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hamas is hedging on that. That, you know what, we're just gonna sit tight, we're gonna
Christian.
hunker down and just wait till the international community rescues us like they have before. Right? I mean, that's it's happened plenty of times, so why not now? So yeah, those are my concerns right now.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we gotta stay hopeful. We
Stay
gotta
vigilant.
do what we can. Yeah, vigilant, hopeful, and do what we can from far away. Keep spreading the news. Keep giving people the updates. Doing a great job, Joe.
I appreciate
So
it.
before we log off, remind our listeners where they can find your work.
Yeah, of course on Twitter and FDD's website, fdd.org, and Long War Journal, one word .org. And that's an FDD product that we publish. So yeah, so definitely check that out.
At Joe
I'm
Truzman.
at Joe Truzman. Ah, yes, thank you. At Joe Truzman on. Oh, I'm sorry. On like I said, on X now. On X, not Twitter.
It's okay
Formerly
if
called
you do
Twitter.
twitter.com.
Yeah,
Elon kindly hyperlinked it.
yeah. Yeah, that's where you can find. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
He's been
What?
super supportive, by the way. It's been really cool to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
He's
That was
like
pretty interesting.
he's making fun of like the narrative that Israel is not doing the right thing, almost like
Yeah, it's
he's
interesting.
doing it in his style, but he supports. I mean, it's important.
It seems so. It seems so. Yeah, definitely. Which is a pleasant thing to see. And
Yeah.
and 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 I generally don't like getting into politics, but I really liked Joe Biden's speech. I think it was
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, it was
He did a
forceful.
really good job. And yeah, I don't like getting into that stuff really, but I was impressed by that actually. So
Yes.
and I think that's okay to say that you're impressed by someone's speech. So that's what I'm saying.
I think that was general consensus. The bar is low for his speeches, but
Yeah.
still. um, thank God. Okay, so we really appreciate your time. And hope we pray for a better day, that we can have a conversation in a different way when you come to Israel. You're always welcome to come over for a meal for Shabbat or wherever, coffee in the shuk. Would love to meet in person when you visit.
Or you
And
can come with me and get deli food in New York. Options are open.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
I'll definitely take it up.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Have
right.
a good day.
Take care.
All right. I
Bye.
appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
We're gonna stay on.